The story begins with Dot, a high school girl who is both deaf and mute. Her disability makes her feel invisible, and she spends most of her time alone, drifting through school without friends. Recently, Dot lost her only family, her father, who raised her alone. Now, she lives with her godmother's family, who have taken her in. Her new godsister, Nina, feels uncomfortable with Dot's presence in the house and dislikes her without any clear reason. At school, Dot is an outcast, someone others overlook or mock, while Nina is part of the popular crowd and enjoys all the attention that comes with it. Nina and her cheerleader friends spot Dot in the hallway and cruelly make fun of her for her disability, laughing at her silence. The school counselor notices this bullying and tries to reach out to Dot, inviting her to join her at lunch to escape the harassment. Dot, however, declines and instead goes to a place where she feels safe, the bathroom stall. Here, Dot finds a moment of peace, appreciating the quiet and privacy that allow her to be herself without judgment. But her comfort is short-lived. Soon after, Nina finds her hiding spot, barging in with frustration, pulling Dot out and making it clear it's time to go home. Back at their house, Nina's mother, Olivia, tries to bridge the gap, encouraging Nina to be kind and help Dot feel welcome in their home. Olivia explains that Dot has been through so much and needs support, but Nina is uninterested. She feels no connection to Dot and sees her as an unwanted addition to her life. In her mind, it wasn't her decision to take Dot in, and she doesn't see why she should make any effort to make her feel at home. That evening, when Nina's father, Paul, comes home, he finds Olivia passed out in the living room. Olivia struggles with alcoholism and depression, burdens that weigh heavily on the family. This adds to the tension and unease in the house, especially with Dot now living with them. After dinner, Paul helps Olivia to bed, as her heavy antidepressant regimen leaves her drowsy and unsteady. Once Olivia is settled, he returns to the dining table, noticing a thick silence hanging over the girls. Hoping to break the tension, Paul suggests they could learn some basic sign language to communicate better with Dot. But before he can say more, Nina rolls her eyes, cuts him off, and leaves the room abruptly. The next day, during lunch at school, Nina and her friends sit in their usual spot, gossiping about anything that will amuse them. Her friend Michelle brings up the topic of dating and teases Nina, poking fun at her for being 17 and still a virgin. Michelle points out that Nina could have any guy she wants but holds back from dating seriously. Nina brushes off the teasing with a shrug, unwilling to reveal her own reasons. Meanwhile, Dot, wandering the school hallways alone, stumbles upon the empty music room. Seeing the piano, she feels a familiar pull and sits down to play. She used to practice the piano back when she could still hear, and though she can no longer hear the notes, her fingers glide over the keys with a practiced grace, producing a melody that fills the room. Connor, one of the popular boys, happens to pass by and stops when he hears the music. Mesmerized by Dot's playing, he watches her for a while, captivated by her skill and focus, before his friend calls him back to reality, and he walks away. Later, Dot runs into Nina in the school bathroom. She tries to keep to herself, but Nina decides to engage, insisting on putting lipstick on Dot. Dot hesitates, but for a moment, she thinks Nina might actually be trying to connect with her. However, when she glances in the mirror, she realizes Nina has smeared the lipstick around her lips on purpose, making her look ridiculous. Any hope of bonding fades as Dot stares at her distorted reflection. That night, Dot lies awake, her mind flooded with memories of her father. She feels the familiar ache of loneliness and decides to step outside for some fresh air. As she wanders the hallway, she notices Nina's bedroom door open. She peeks inside, and what she sees shocks her to the core. Nina and her father, Paul, are together in bed. Horrified, Dot quickly retreats to her room, her heart racing with confusion and fear. The next evening at dinner, Nina casually asks her parents for permission to stay overnight at her friend Michelle's. Paul firmly refuses, but Olivia, trying to support Nina, encourages her to go. As Paul holds his ground, Nina subtly runs her foot up his leg under the table, attempting to seduce him into allowing her. Paul remains silent, which Nina takes as permission, and she immediately calls Michelle to make plans. Frustrated, Paul later confronts Olivia, annoyed by how she consistently undermines his decisions. They exchange tense words before he walks away from the table. Later, when Olivia is alone, Dote quietly hands her a note, asking if she can go to the movies. Paul offers to drive her, and Dote reluctantly agrees, sensing a tension she can't quite articulate. At the theater, Dote finds herself alone in a quiet hall, with only Nina and her friends sitting in the middle row. Connor notices Dote sitting by herself and considers approaching her, but his friends pull him back, dissuading him. Nina glances in Dote's direction and, for a moment, seems to feel a pang of sympathy, but she quickly masks it. Curious about Dote's experience, Nina experimentally covers her ears, trying to imagine what it's like to be deaf. She stops abruptly when she realizes Dote is watching her, embarrassed and exposed. That night, Dote lies awake, troubled by her encounter with Nina and the events surrounding her. Her thoughts are interrupted when she hears footsteps. Pretending to be asleep, she senses Paul enter her room. He gently strokes her hair, whispering to himself, calling himself sick. It becomes clear he understands the darkness of his actions with Nina, but he feels trapped, unable to change. Taking Dote into the family, he had hoped her presence might keep him away from Nina, but it hasn't eased his compulsions. The next day, Dote finds herself alone at home, filling the silence by playing the piano. She loses herself in the music, unaware that Nina has returned home early and is watching her quietly from the doorway. Suddenly, a piano wire snaps, startling Dote and causing her to mutter a rare curse word aloud. Nina freezes in shock, realizing that Dote may have been able to hear all along. Instead of confronting Dote, she pretends she has just arrived home and doesn't call her out on this possible deception. The next day, at lunch, Nina unexpectedly sits with Dote for the first time. Dote watches her in confusion as Nina begins sharing disturbing details about her private moments with her father, clearly trying to provoke Dote. But Dote listens silently, refusing to react. Before leaving, Nina hints darkly that she plans to use Michelle's gun to kill Paul that night. Dote stays outwardly calm, but the threat unsettles her, leaving her uncertain if Nina is serious. To distract herself, Dote heads to the music room and starts playing the piano again. This time, she notices Connor watching her from the doorway. Feeling nervous, she attempts to leave, but he stops her. He invites her out, suggesting they work on a lab report together. Dote surprises him by showing her already finished report, throwing him off guard. That evening, as the family sits down for dinner, there's a knock at the door, and Connor appears, asking if Dote would join him at the library to review their lab work. Dote hesitates but agrees. Just then, Michelle arrives and hands a small bag to Nina. Dote's heart sinks as she remembers Nina's mention of Michelle's gun, feeling a renewed fear that Nina might actually be planning something against Paul. In the next scene, Dote and Connor sit together at a diner. Connor begins discussing the lab report, but quickly shifts to his real reason for being there. He opens up about his feelings for Dote. Believing that she cannot hear him, he shares his thoughts and fantasies about her, speaking freely and unaware that she understands him. Suddenly, Dote notices an ambulance speeding toward her house. Panicked, she assumes that Nina has carried out her threat and rushes home, bracing herself for the worst. But when she arrives, she's relieved to find everyone safe. She quietly heads toward Nina's room, where she overhears Paul's voice as he undresses Nina. The distress in Nina's voice is evident, and Dote senses her godsister's silent desperation. Acting quickly, Dote decides to help in the only way she can think of. She breaks a nearby statue. The loud noise startles Paul, interrupting the moment and prompting him to leave Nina's room and return to his own. Left alone, Nina breaks down in tears, feeling a deep sense of pain and betrayal. Dote quietly slips into Nina's room and lies beside her, gently holding her as she falls asleep, offering silent comfort. In the next scene, Nina is ironing her cheerleader uniform, speaking to Dote with a hint of malice. She tells Dote that she plans to kill Paul that night using the iron, demonstrating her intent by burning the face of a teddy bear. Dote remains outwardly calm, still under the impression that Nina is unaware she can hear. and pretends to ignore her chilling threat. Later that day, Nina and her friend Michelle cheer on their school's basketball team from the sidelines. Connor, playing on the team, is taken off the court shortly after the game begins due to his poor performance, and he spends the rest of the match on the bench. After the game, Connor and Dote wander over to the school's pool, where they spend time alone. Connor, still believing that Dote is deaf, talks freely about his personal life, sharing details about his experiences and relationships. In a quiet moment, Dote surprises him by taking off her top, and the two share an intimate encounter by the pool. Meanwhile, back at home, Olivia casually remarks that Nina and Connor would make a great couple. This comment sparks a furious reaction from Paul, who accuses Olivia of encouraging Nina to dress provocatively and act in ways that attract unwanted attention. Their conversation quickly spirals into tension as Paul expresses his anger. The mood shifts dramatically when Olivia, in an attempt to regain some intimacy with her husband, disrobes and tries to reconnect with him. However, Paul seems completely uninterested, brushing off her advances with a cold dismissal, leaving Olivia to retreat into herself. Later that night, Nina returns home, exhausted from cheering all day. She walks into the house to find Paul waiting for her, holding a gift, a new handbag. He uses it as an excuse to get close, making uncomfortable and inappropriate advances. In a brief cutaway, we see Olivia, awake in her bedroom, fully aware of what's happening. She hears the tension between them but chooses to remain silent, paralyzed by the situation. Seizing the moment, Nina tells Paul to close his eyes, claiming she has a surprise for him. As he complies, Nina approaches him, holding the hot iron with malicious intent, preparing to burn his face. Just as she's about to strike, the door opens unexpectedly, and Dote returns home, interrupting the moment. The tension in the room breaks, and Nina quickly pulls back. Thinking fast, she blurts out that she's pregnant, shocking Paul with the implication that he could be the father of his own grandchild. Paul is disturbed by the news. He listens as Nina calmly asks him for $1,000 to take care of it. Though shaken, Paul agrees to give her the money the following day, his mind racing with the weight of the situation. The next day, Nina quietly enters Dote's room, sitting beside her and admitting, with rare vulnerability, that she wasn't brave enough to go through with hurting him. This brief moment of honesty between the two girls feels like a fragile connection, a fleeting glimpse of understanding in the midst of chaos. As preparations for the school dance unfold, Nina lends Dote a dress, helping her get ready for the night. In the process, she confesses the truth. She lied about being pregnant. Her real plan is to take the $1,000, escape to another state, and start over. She dreams of becoming a stripper, earning enough money to build a life of independence far from the tangled web of lies she's trapped in. For the first time, Nina applies lipstick to Dote's lips with a gentle, almost tender touch, a rare act of care in their complicated relationship. Later, as Paul searches for Nina, he finds her bag and stumbles upon the tampons inside. Further proof that her pregnancy claim was a lie. Paul realizes Nina lied about the pregnancy, despite her earlier claim of missing her period for over 6 weeks. Furious, he confronts her with the tampon, demanding the truth. Nina hesitates, struggling to come up with an excuse, but Paul, no longer believing her, erupts in anger. He slaps her across the face and attempts to force himself on her. Olivia hears her daughter's cries from the other room but remains silent, choosing not to intervene. Dote, however, hears the screams clearly from across the house. Stopping her music, Dote's heart races as she steels herself. With quick, decisive movements, she rips a wire from the piano and marches toward the bedroom. Upon seeing Paul assaulting Nina, Dote's anger surges. She takes immediate action, wrapping the wire tightly around Paul's neck, shouting for him to leave Nina alone. In moments, Paul collapses to the floor, lifeless. Nina, still in shock and struggling to process what just happened, curses Dote, blaming her for killing her daddy. Olivia enters the room, her eyes wide with disbelief, but rather than focusing on Paul's lifeless body, she stares in shock at Dote, astonished by the fact that Dote can speak. In the midst of the chaos, the doorbell rings. Michelle arrives to pick up the girls for the school dance. The two girls quickly change into fresh clothes, hiding the blood-stained ones in a bag as they try to maintain some normalcy. At school, Dote dances with Connor, but her mind is far away, too overwhelmed by the recent events to fully engage in the moment. Dote takes the backpack with the blood-stained clothes and hides in a bathroom stall, trying to block out the chaos around her. She waits for the school dance to end, hoping for a brief moment of solitude to clear her racing thoughts. Every noise feels amplified in the silence she craves, but her mind is still tangled in the horrors of what just happened. Meanwhile, back at home, Olivia sits alone in the bedroom, staring blankly at Paul's lifeless body. There is no sorrow in her eyes, only a quiet emptiness. She realizes she stopped loving him long ago, but the weight of her inaction haunts her. Her only regret now is not having the strength to protect her daughter from a man who had become a monster in their lives. As the party begins to wind down, Connor spots Dote leaving and calls out her name. To his shock, she turns to face him, revealing that she can hear him. The truth hits Connor hard, and his surprise quickly morphs into anger. He pieces it together. Dote had been deceiving him all along, hiding the truth about her abilities, and now she knew all his darkest secrets. He accuses her of being a psycho for betraying his trust and deceiving him. Dote tries to explain, but Connor, consumed by his emotions, angrily pushes her away, unwilling to hear her out. Understanding that there is no chance for forgiveness at this moment, Dote pushes aside her own hurt and focuses on the task at hand. She finds Nina, still hiding in the bathroom, and the two of them slip away into the night. They make their way to a nearby creek, where under the cover of darkness, they bury the backpack, attempting to erase the evidence of the night's horrors. As they stand by the water, Nina finally asks the question that has been lingering in the air. Why did Dote pretend to be deaf all this time? Dote softly explains that she did it to feel closer to her father, who had been both deaf and mute. In her own way, she had wanted to honor his memory. The girls hurry home, only to find their house surrounded by flashing police lights. Officers are escorting Olivia outside in handcuffs, her face blank, devoid of emotion. Shocked and confused, Dote and Nina stand frozen, watching as the scene unfolds. The officers ask Olivia what happened, and without hesitation, she calmly admits to killing Paul. In the quiet that follows, she turns to Nina, her voice soft but sincere, offering a heartfelt apology. The police assume it's regret for taking Nina's father's life, but Nina, in the silence between them, understands it's something deeper, a silent acknowledgement of the years of pain and neglect Olivia allowed to happen under their roof. Dote and Nina stand side by side, both staring at the police car that drives Olivia away, taking her into the night. The weight of everything they've lived through hangs heavily between them as the house falls quiet.